If you're someone who travels or does frequent business in different time zones, a watch with a GMT complication is going to be a useful part of your everyday carry. So in this video, I wanted to look at a trio of GMT watches representing 3 different price ranges to help mark some of the changes as you ascend in dollars spent. The watches, a Christopher Ward C65 Trident GMT, the Bell & Ross V2 93 GMT, and the Tudor Black Bay GMT. Let's jump into it. All right guys, now before we jump into this video, check out our latest guide looking at 25 of the best pilot watches on the market. GMT, complication, as well as pilots, those have become quite synonymous with one another. In that guide, we're looking at a variety of different price ranges, starting with affordable, working all the way up to luxury. Also, if you want to stay up to date with our latest guides, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter as well. Before we dig into a discussion of the watches themselves, let's briefly discuss what a GMT is and the differences between an office and a true GMT. In general, GMT watches are equipped with an additional hand, which is an independently set to a secondary 24-hour scale located either on the dial or bezel. This execution dates back to the early 1950s, with GMT being an acronym for Greenwich Mean Time, which was considered the world standard reference for time zones during the period. For a GMT, there are 2 hour hands. One is going to be your local hour time, usually designed uniformly to the minute and second hand, and then you have your home time, which is more often than not executed with a distinctive color and is set in correspondence to a 24-hour scale. There are 2 primary methods of executing a GMT watch, split between the more widely available collar or office GMT and the more expensive and complicated true GMT. A collar or office GMT is typically utilized in watches priced under $3,000 to $4,000, given they utilize familiar third-party calibers from the likes of ETA, Sellita, or Soprod that we've seen in recent years. With an office GMT, moving the crown to the second position allows an isolated function of the 24-hour home time and also the date when it is available, but not your local hour hand. These are sometimes called office GMTs because they are more convenient for people who are staying in one place, and it's harder to set upon arrival at a different location in a travel scenario because you have to reset all the hands in order to set properly. On the contrary, a true or traveler's GMT features an independently adjusted local hour hand that can be easily set in 1 hour increments with its own crown position. This allows a frequent traveler to reset only the local time without having to stop the balance wheel in the process, so you're not going to have to deal with any resetting of time. This does come with some tedious setting of the date, but this is still preferred by many frequent travelers across different time zones. While there are a few exceptions, the catch for these types of movements are they typically cost over $4,000, as third-party movement providers don't provide this function out of the box. But now let's take a closer look at these 3 watches, starting with the least expensive watch. We have the UK independent brand Christopher Ward here to kick things off. Now, CW is a brand that is well regarded for their value, and with this piece coming in around $1,200 to $1,500, depending on some strap as well as some availability options, it is one of the better offerings for a Swiss-made GMT watch while leaning into a design aesthetic that greatly separates from the other 2 entries we have here. Starting with the case and wearing experience, the C65 GMT leans into a traditional set of dimensions with a 41mm diameter paired with a 46.7mm lug-to-lug measurement that helps this watch wear well in a variety of different wrist sizes, especially given the slender 12mm of thickness. Case finishing is impressive for the price, with a brushed case top and faceted case sides that alternate between brushing and polishing. The unidirectional stainless steel bezel is strangely 120 clicks and has recessed painted 24-hour markers. At 3, a signed push-pull crown holds the fort while still allowing for a healthy 150 meters of water resistance. At the back, a screw-down case back features CW's overused Trident logo, while a box section sapphire crystal adds some durability up front. Moving into the dial, this Christopher Ward utilizes a similar theme as other Trident models, with printed 3-dimensional rectangular indices and a doubled up index at the 12 o'clock position. The handset doesn't lean into an otherwise vintage theme watch, utilizing a set of stylized batons for the hours and minutes along with the signature but polarizing Trident counterweight on the stick second hand. For the secondary time zone, the Trident employs a simple orange arrow that makes 1 revolution every 24 hours over a matte black dial surface lying beneath. Dial text is minimal, panel, but not oriented in the usual fashion, the CW word mark at the 9 and an imprinted logo at the 12, with a date window in the usual 3 o'clock spot. As a note, the loom is also solid on this piece, especially considering this is of the faux patina variety. Typically, this is usually not a good combination if you want actual output of that loom. But compared to the other two, this dial has a mixing of modern and vintage looks that can clash at times, but legibility and finish certainly are there for the price. As you'd expect for a watch in this price range, the C65 leans into a third-party office GMT caliber, in this case the Sellita SW330. This movement is reliable, and while some will desire true GMT functionality, you'll seldom find it in this price range unless you're looking at some Swatch Group offerings with the likes of Mito with their Ocean Star GMT. However, those are more anomalies than the norm, and the CW here certainly represents solid value. The SW330 featured in this watch is one of Sellita's more elevated, slimmer options, with it being essentially a clone of the ETA 2893. In terms of its general specifications, you're looking at 28,800 vibration per hour, 4 Hertz movement, does feature hacking and hand winding, hacking stopping the second hand when you pull the crown to the farthest position, and has a 42-hour power reserve. Moving up to our next price tier, we have the Bell & Ross V293 GMT, a watch that will set you back $3,500 on a bracelet, a significant jump over the CW, but it's easily one of my personal favorite Bell & Ross designs. Like the other two watches on this list, the V293 has some retro elements, but with its use of color and superb case finish, offers some modern attributes in its favor. On the wrist, the 41mm wide by 47.5mm long case wears slightly smaller thanks to the restrained lug-to-lug for its diameter. Aiding in the wearing experience further is the slim 12mm of thickness, with around 2mm of that metric stemming from the dome sapphire crystal. Case and bracelet finishing is probably the best feature for this watch, as it is arguably the best of the entire trio. It is executed in the traditional sport watch format, with brushing on the case's top surfaces and polishing at the vertical case flanks, crown guards, and the signed screw-down crown that, coupled with the screw-down exhibition case back, allows for this watch's capable 100 meters of water resistance. The lug width is unfortunately 21mm. However, the bracelet is wonderful and is well worth attaching it to the watch itself. Bell & Ross had many of their cases produced by Zinn back in the 1990s and early 2000s until parting ways in 2002. And there's no question some of the remnants of the design shared from the brands are present here with this refined H-link style. It features brushed outer links and polished center links, meeting at a secure 2-button release clasp with 3 points of micro adjustment. Working in tandem with the meticulous polished elements is the striking bezel with its anodized blue and gray aluminum 24-hour insert that rotates bidirectionally into 24 distinct positions. The dial here combines aviation instrument design elements with an otherwise clean execution. Printed over a sunburst metallic blue surface, the V293 opts for an oversized set of Arabics at the 12, 3, 6, and 9 with simple rectangular markings in between. A polish and loom leaf style hour hand is paired with an especially long pencil minute hand, which is easily distinguishable from the red arrow style hand, but the minute and second hand are a bit harder to decipher between until recognizing that sweep. The dial is also accompanied by a very small circular date window and minimal dial text, with the loom here also being strong, glowing with bright green incandescence. Now, despite this watch featuring arguably the best bracelet finish and case finish of the three, the biggest challenge facing this watch is going to be the movement for the dollar amount, as despite the price jump over the CW, the B&R utilizes a similar GMT caliber with the ETA 2893, essentially a 2892 with an added GMT function. This movement is an elevated caliber in ETA's collection, known for being slim around 4mm. However, this presents one of the challenges with availability of movements with a true GMT function and the diminishing returns that can accompany it unless a brand is developing their own caliber. In terms of general specifications for this movement, we're looking at 28,800 vibrations per hour, 4 Hertz. It does feature hacking and hand winding and has a power reserve of approximately 50 hours. And although it would be nice to see something in-house here, it's still even rarer at this price range of around $3,500, as $4,000 tends to be the cutoff where the luxury segment starts offering this feature, and that is when the Tudor Black Bay comes into play. Finally, getting into our highest price point of $4,050, we have the Tudor Black Bay GMT, a watch released to massive fanfare in 2018 alongside the Black Bay 58. For Tudor, the Black Bay GMT represented a powerful combination of Tudor's already successful 41mm Black Bay case format with a new GMT caliber and the Pepsi color scheme so desired by Rolex and Tudor fans. On the wrist, the 41 by 50mm case wears noticeably larger than the CW or the Bell & Ross, largely as an effect effect of what many will call the slabbed off vertical case size, coupled with the thickness being just south of 15 millimeters. In terms of case finishing, there is a perceptible difference in the style of the case and bracelet finish that is going to be on display here compared to the Bell & Ross. With a brushed top and polished sides, the Black Bay draws attention with a slender polished bevel that runs the length of the case that pairs well with the Pepsi bezel. It's worth noting here that the bezel action is far and away the best of the trio, being one of the more discernible jumps in quality. At 3, a Tudor Rose signed screw-down crown works in tandem with the sterile case back and producing 200 meters of water resistance, again leading the pack. Using 22 millimeter lugs, the Tudor's riveted oyster-style bracelet is excellent, with one of the best clasps in the price category, offering micro adjustment in that clasp and also screwed in links. Although the surface finish of the brushed Bell & Ross looks a tad more discernible with those brushed lines present on the case and bracelet, the oyster style and clasp on this Tudor is hard to dispute from day-to-day practice. That said, the hefty build and dimensions of the Tudor will be a hard point to overlook for some, especially with the versatile and slim cases of the previous examples. Gazing through the slightly domed sapphire crystal, the Black Bay GMT follows the established Black Bay dial formula with triangular, circular, and rectangular hour markings over a matte black surface. Snowflake hands manage daily time-telling duties as well as an additional time zone with the help of that red GMT hand with its own red snowflake style end, with lume on all the areas being excellent in their shine. But really where the Tudor stands out on its own is with the caliber on the inside, the manufacturer caliber MT5652. This movement is the first in our lineup that offers a true GMT function, and in many ways, this watch is a true gatekeeper for GMT watches in the luxury segment. It features a variable inertia balance, silicon balance spring, COSC certification, and an extended power reserve of 70 hours while operating at 4 Hz, 28,800 vibrations per hour, and featuring hacking and hand winding. Specs on paper, this one is absolutely by far the best, and is certainly a reason why this one is going to be priced higher. Now, one point of emphasis though with this Tudor movement, as in the forums there were reported problems with the date mechanism getting jammed on this movement. In our time with the watch, we were not able to replicate the issue, and based on updated forum posts, the reports of this issue seem to have slowed down considerably. However, this is something that needs to be mentioned when looking at this movement, and if you are watching this and say own the watch, I just love for your input down below. If you have any experience with this watch firsthand, I know other people would appreciate hearing that. But in terms of my actual experience and what I've handled with this watch, I've not been able to replicate any issues. So now just to unpack at the end here, really my point for this video is not to necessarily compare all of these watches together, but more kind of mark some of the difference as you go up market generally, but also when you're looking at the complication of GMTs. One thing I talk about all the time when it comes to chronographs is I think many people probably underestimate really what goes into creating a chronograph movement. Now, I don't think it's necessarily the same parallel here with a GMT complication, as just having a 3-hand or a 4-hand movement is not nearly going to be as complex as that of a chronograph, but still, this ascension into true in-house movements or movements with a true GMT function is going to sometimes be a bit diminishing. As you'll kind of notice, in this $1,000 to $2,000 range, there's a ton of different GMT calibers out there. Most of them are going to be utilizing the common players, those ETA 2893s, the Sellita SW300s, or maybe looking at something like the Soprod C125, which we've seen a little bit more lately. There are some exceptions, like I mentioned with the Swatch Group and some of their Powermatic 80 movements actually having a true GMT function, the Chemende Toral from Tissot, or one that I like to mention quite a bit, the Mito Ocean Star GMT. But once you get into that $2,000 to $4,000 price range, you're seeing a lot of these same movements, and really you're kind of relying more on that case finish, which kind of was the difficulty with that Bell & Ross, despite an amazing design. I absolutely love the look of it. But in terms of what it's positioned as compared to some stuff underneath it, it's really hard to make a GMT work unless you're getting that true GMT function. And that's where I think the Tudor is so well positioned. And as you're kind of getting into the world of like Omega, maybe some of their Planet Ocean GMTs, the Aquaterra GMTs, that's kind of that next tier. So I almost want to just kind of show that hierarchy. Also, when you're thinking about getting into the world of GMT movements, I think you have to really think about, do you really care about the upsides of a true GMT? The truth is there are some amazing GMT watches in that $1,000 to $2,000 price range. That's really where I start to see an abundance of them, and where I see the value really being present there. But all right guys, that's my video here today. If you did enjoy this kind of just kind of trek up market and looking at 3 different price ranges, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. What's your take on GMT complications, just the complication in general, but also where do you see the best value for a GMT on the market? Also, definitely check out TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of over 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, full factory warranty for all the products that we carry, and 9 out of every $10 we generate goes right back into the content that we're creating here. If you want to stay up to date with the content, be sure to follow on Instagram. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.